How's it going, everybody? My cup of tea here, back from the reaction video, and today we're here to watch some more Warhammer videos. Yay, yay! Now, a couple weeks ago, I think I watched a video on Imperium's top 10 worst jobs, and that was a pretty interesting and dark watch. Pretty dark, pretty dark. And today we're here to watch part 2 of the Imperium top 10 worst jobs. Now, I don't know what happened between part 1 and part 2, but part 2 is over an hour long, so I guess he has a lot more to say on this one, so let's just dive right into this. Let's just dive right in. I want to waste no time, so grab some snacks, grab some drinks, grab some food, grab whatever you want. Grab your dog, who cares? Grab your cat. Go ahead, we're gonna have a fun time, so let's watch this together. Now, I realized it didn't say top 10 worst jobs here, so I guess I don't know how many jobs we're gonna be covering, so let's just watch this together. Also, in the part 1, after the end of the video, I had ranked the 10 jobs, like I made my own little list. Depending on how this goes, he might rank these jobs too, so stick around for more. Alright, let's start this. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Sorry, you're hearing noises. I'll be right back. Be right back. Sorry about that. I am back now. I am back. Had to take care of that noise problem. Let's get it back. It is better that the masses do not know the truth behind what they consume, for many find their sanity overwhelmed by the necessity of our great work. Which is true. That's very true. They be doing some crazy stuff behind the scenes. Also, I got my Courage to Cali dog shirt because I've been watching some dark videos apparently out of nowhere. These couple of videos I watched have been pretty dark. So I decided to switch my attires and bring out the Courage because it's scary hours, it looks like. Alright. See what the theme is about here. Captions are on?
Within the bowels of
Yes.
the Imperium, the souls that lie down in the filth, decay and horror, it's difficult for those poor wretches to consider themselves within the vision and the light of the Emperor of Man. For as gloriously as the Imperium presents itself in the depths of the human spirit and the lowest levels of its vast hive cities, languish those in eternal despair, never to know anything other than a life of hardship, toil and suffering, the rotten core of humanity's galactic empire. This is why it remains its own worst enemy, for here is where you'll find the most acute fracture points for discontent and those with nothing left to live for, other than turn their souls over to the darkest whisperings that bleed into our reality from the realm behind
crazy way to describe
own.
it all.
It's worth remembering also that for those who live in the Imperium, the phrase jobs is relatively inaccurate. Most people's assignments are not what we might consider jobs, they're more worker assignments. This though is of course dependent on the world you find yourself upon.
Yeah,
For there
I
are
can't
those
quit these
within
jobs,
realms
some of
such as Ultramar where degrees of independence are far more commonplace. Another aspect I've spoken to before is that within the Imperium there is no standardized currency system in the sense of a currency used by all, including ordinary citizenry anyway. And to do so would be challenging, if not near impossible, given the distance, scale and instability of the Imperium as a whole. While many hive worlds, for example, use ambiguously titled credits, individual systems may have their own localized currencies, and other feudal planets can even operate on a more basic barter system, supplemented with very rudimentary coinage. There exists a unit of value known as the Throne Gelt, which is as close to being universal payment as exists. This is often exclusively used by traders, rogue traders, inquisitors, and other imperial officials who travel between systems and sectors of the galaxy. However you end up being compensated for your services though, it's most unlikely that you as an ordinary pleb citizen would have a literal choice in the direction of your life. Upon most worlds there is little if any education beyond the basic laws to follow and how to operate machinery. Most people live with passed down knowledge on how to survive as a human in the most basic sense. And those humans in the eyes of the Imperium are merely flesh matter. They are unimportant dust motes in the grand scale of the Imperium, and you are as much a raw material asset
You mean nothing to us.
as much as is ore, ammunition or other consumables. So now let us continue to explore the true horror of 40k. For it is not the glory and service of the Astartes, it is the mind-numbing drudgery, the lack of hope, the acceptance of banality that is the true horror for humans in the nightmare that is the 41st millennium.
What is this
Many
over here?
welcome
What am I
death
looking
when it
at?
comes, and others mutter about the madness of their own. The Imperium directs its rage and fury outwardly to the Xenos and the Heretic, but it is much to blame for the extreme levels of suffering inflicted upon the many trillions of ordinary citizens across the entire galaxy, as much as those who would seek to see
how bad can these
permanently
jobs actually be
obliterated.
compared to the first
If
one?
you
It can't be
yourself
that
were
bad.
here, how would you serve? What role would you see yourself in? If you have a worse 40k job in mind, as always, throw it in the comments, and maybe I'll include it in a part 3 of this series.
And he made a part 3.
The horror.
He made a part 3. Heck.
In the darkness of the 41st millennium, humanity has fallen into a true abyss of moral and ethical darkness. Human lives are bizarrely fought for ferociously in terms of the preservation of the collective empire that is the Emperor's Imperium, yet individual lives are treated as little more than a material commodity. Conversion to
Hold on, is it working? I make these subtitles bigger? Alright, I made the subtitles a bit bigger. We're good, we're good.
Emperor's Imperium, yet individual lives are treated as little more than a material commodity. Conversion to servitors, archo-flagellants and the like, thinking, feeling human beings stripped of both their humanity and their minds turned to mush with regularity. The Imperium also uses techniques like mind wiping of problematic or troublemaking individuals, those they consider compromised or even just a risk factor. Mind wipes are usually achieved through a flood of neurochemicals being injected to the base of the cranium, steadily erasing personal memories and identity like a cold, clouded fog drifting through the mind of an individual. This is not isolated in use for conversion of humans to servitor slaves. It also can be used for Astartes, especially those in the Grey Knights, where mind wiping is standard practice to protect them from themselves while facing demons that might twist and distort their memory of loved ones to become weapons against an individual. Mind wipes, though, are not always the default practice for control of humans in low status service. Many in fact exist in a state of servitude, but are only subjected to damaging processes like mind wipes should it be strictly necessary. And this can sometimes occur for those who live in service to the Mechanicus. They are known as the tech thralls. Thralls, however, are not like servitors. They are still classified as human, at least in terms of their minds. Anyway, they retain thoughts of their hopes and dreams. They hold on to fears and express desires. Some tech thralls burn brighter than others in their feelings, but most are depressingly broken individuals, worn down to shells of human being through the endless drudgery of their existence. Brutality, tough shifts of menial labour, most would gladly welcome death when it finally comes. They may be known as ad secularis, the tech thralls. They exist primarily as the servant class of the Adeptus Mechanicus, cybernetically adapted humans who retain some semblance of humanity. They sit just above servitors in ranking, but far below all others.
They're just above servitors?
To ensure they remain both obedient and efficient, and while their humanity is left more intact than that of a servitor's conversion, where servitors are effectively brain dead and merely motorized flesh matter, it's entirely debatable as to whether this is in fact a more humane fate than that of the adaptation and subsequent assignments which mean becoming a tech thrall, where your life is all but consigned to oblivion, yet left within your shell are the last threads of your humanity, screaming from the inside out. In the eyes of the Mechanicus, however, they are simply a necessary adaptation. Although often they select the most disposable individuals, troublemakers, deserters, prisoners, condemned criminals.
It's not that bad.
It should be noted that those selected for the role of a tech thrall may equally hail from just ordinary citizenry when needs must.
I try to get a benefit of the doubt and they take it away.
Will be augmented with basic cybernetics. Commonly, this involves limb removal and degrees of exoskeletal reinforcement.
Remove that flesh body for the Mechanicus.
Heavy loads and operate large-scale machinery and other industrial tasks. They also may be subjected to relatively low-tech optical and other interface adaptation. Lastly, there may be some cranial surgery where some mind erasure can take place for the most troublesome or offensive individuals. The thrall class of human will obey any order given by the Mechanicus or other imperial authority. They are in effect drones, but while much of their humanity is stripped away, they do still attempt to retain something or some semblance of a society within themselves, or as much as it can be classified as such. It may seem that to a degree they are not far away from the levels of subjugation inflicted upon ordinary citizens of the Imperium, but thralls exist in fact barely above servitors. They just have the unfortunate terminal torture of being very aware of it. Thralls
I know I'm stuck like this. I can't do nothing about it.
And this development occurred during the period of imperial expansion known as the Great Crusade, culminating in the Horus Heresy. It's unclear as to why, but for whatever reason, there became an intense need for something slightly above servitors, which used formerly human biological matter, and after effectively lobotomization of a subject, servitors became a bio-cybernetic component system. Thralls are more akin to straight cyborgs. Their consciousness and memory are generally not extinguished before being processed into their new form. The conversion process to tech Thralls is a fate for many of a Forge World's population should they prove substandard in their duties or commit some other transgression against members of the Mechanicus. And the Mechanicus hate wasting things. Why simply dispose of a troublesome human when they can serve the almighty cog until death?
I respect that mindset. For some reason, I respect that mindset. I don't know why.
Expendable labor force, and this is standard across the Imperium. There will, of course, still be large components.
He's like, hey, Mechanic's like, hey, what are you doing to that guy? Oh, well, he's useless. We better eliminate him. Hold on now. I think we can use him. I think we use that fellow over there. Let's pick him up Thrall. Yeah, I think that'll do nicely. Yeah. Let's not waste that spare part right there. He can serve the Mechanicus. Oh, he can serve the Omnicide.
Of standard humans, but Thralls are commonplace. If Thralls are to be used for military purposes by the Mechanicus, this is when they are designated as the Ad Secularis, and this is of course a role that they are well suited for. After being outfitted with basic weapons systems and bodily protection, they will march to war as basically humanoid fodder. They are an unrelenting force of mentally alive soldiers, yet with no will of their own, puppeted by Mechanicus techs. It's not entirely dissimilar to some other machinery used by the tech priests, who are seemingly more skilled with wetware than they are the artificial systems of intelligence, perhaps for obvious reasons, being that the latter is strictly outlawed. Tech Thralls will advance into the most ferocious enemy onslaughts without apparent fear, and are formed into so-called covenants.
Go get them.
Their primary weapon is, like so much in the Imperium, weight of numbers, sending wave after wave
at them and see what happens,
and making any foe seem, quite simply, a trifle. Thralls are, unfortunately for them, just as susceptible to injury as any guardsmen, except they have the additional misery of being very dulled externally in response to their injuries. Internally, it's likely a sliding scale of just how much or how little individual Thralls actually feel. For some, it's perhaps akin to being a servant of the plague god, whereby any injury barely registers in terms of pain. For other Thralls who perhaps still burn bright in the mind but lack will of their own, it's going to be comparable to awakening during surgery but remaining trapped in an unresponsive body.
So different Thralls have like different
relevant to the machine god.
They experience pain differently.
Away, but knowledge must remain eternal. All of this, though, is not actually why tech Thralls feature in this second offering of worst jobs. The reasoning for their inclusion is that no matter...
Wait, I was like, it doesn't sound... I mean, it sounds bad. It doesn't sound like that bad. I feel like part 2 should be like more like terrible jobs compared to part 1. So I wonder, like, what's actually the why they're here.
This second offering of worst jobs. The reasoning for their inclusion is that no matter their service record, longevity, or otherwise general usefulness, the ultimate fate of any tech Thrall or Ad Secularis is to be recycled into servitor components. Their automatic implants will be harvested for continued use. There is no hope for them other than remaining a defective, inferior
you're dying. You're just no way you're not dying.
And general humanity. They exist as the condemned and the despised. Death is a release when it comes, until they, of course, enter the realm beyond. Now, also, allow me to immediately contradict myself, for there is one other notable class of Ad Secularis, but it is a very minimal class, generally speaking.
Let me hear it.
These are the Titan Ad Secularis. Can you guess to which role they're assigned? It's Titans. Different videos can refer to the tech Thralls under them with other terms than Ad Secularis, and will even sometimes dress them with clean tabards and other simple cloth to give them a level of dignity, not for themselves obviously, but to not offend the sanctity of the machine and its spirit. This is perhaps one of the exceptions to the rule, as Thralls who serve within a Titan may sometimes be gifted minimal benefits by its tech priests, augmetics and so forth. Mostly these so-called gifts can be interpreted more for the Mechanicus wanting to increase efficiency aboard a Titan than give anything to a Thrall. But still, for the Thrall, it's equally beneficial.
A simple Thrall?
It is perhaps the single
but for the machine, of course,
for a Thrall to serve aboard a god machine of the Mechanicus, and in doing so, achieve a sliver of dignity and appreciation for their service. For the remaining unwashed masses, it's a lifetime of otherwise condemned misery.
Dang. That was holy. Alright. Yeah, now he added some more context on why they're bad. Yeah, okay, yeah, Like you can't escape this fate. There's no breaks, and you're dying. You will die. There's no like, oh, I can escape this. Nah, you're dying. Either out in the war, your body collapse, your life is back to the end. You're gonna die, and you're gonna be recycled. And there will be no benefits unless you're a Titan type, like you're Titan, like you in those Titan mechs. Other than that, you get no benefits. You get no thanks, no nothing. You're just fodder for the all-powerful Omnisign. Oh, all right.
Now the
Chapter
selection
Surf.
of Chapter Surf as a worst job will undoubtedly be a contentious selection, because it honestly is somewhat subjective.
Okay.
In many ways, serving as a serf for the Astartes can only be seen as the highest honour, and any service to the Imperium and the Emperor is a glorious duty and one to be held with immense pride. Not to mention the fact that serfs are generally well treated, in relatively safe environments, also educated above ordinary humans who live miserable trudging lives in hive cities around pollution, disease, crime, and most often abominable
make me a serf. Make me a serf. It sounds great.
Live within chapter monasteries of Astartes, surrounded by glorious sculptures, artisan works, and of course on a daily basis serve firsthand those who are the descendants of the Emperor himself. In the manner of speaking, give me a break. So, why would serfs be included?
Yeah, this sounds like
I said,
greatness.
It depends on your point of view, so hear me out. And it's also a very literal sliding scale. There are many examples of ordinary humans serving the Astartes who would rise to hold ranks such as Housecarl or Equerry. At the other end of the scale, there are those who will live lives which again, I feel can be torturous. Serfs are very often failed space marines, who for one reason or another did not meet the grade when it came to the progression of becoming a space marine. Now they have to live lives away from their homeworld, their family, and they may live in shame and humiliation every single day. The fact that their son never became an Astartes, or perhaps they live in mistaken delusion, believing still a slim chance that they were in fact converted to an Astartes. The serf's life, though, can be wide-ranging. Some will be abused on a near-daily basis by Astartes masters who look down upon them and remind them of their own humanity, something they hate. They will throw continual demeaning shame toward them at every opportunity. Some Astartes chapters, and especially those who would fall into darkness during the heresy, like the Death Guard, would punish serfs with brutal physical penalties for minor errors in service.
Sounds like hazing in college. I'll stop.
Unsurprisingly, the warriors as well. But for many serfs, the daily existence of being permanently reminded of their failures, yet simultaneously knowing they must continue to serve the Emperor, is something of a bizarre torture. I mean, yes, they are rewarded by the ability and glory of serving the Astartes, but the continual personal humiliation of knowing they just lost out, or they didn't make the cut, never ceases to burn inside. Some serfs, though, will make actual close friendships and bond with the more reasonable and forward-thinking Astartes chapters. For those, though, that lean toward the edge of acceptable practices, existence as a serf can be a daily trial for survival, punctuated with broken limbs and other intolerable punishments. Like so many things, it's subjective and relative. Humans position their outlook from their own place relative to others, and while it's easy to say, well, look at that poor sap cleaning the drains from a toxic spill in a hive basement, sure, a serf has it better comparably. For a serf, though, such thoughts will be a cold comfort, while their Astartes master is belittling them for the thousandth time, being made to endure some long-lasting physical trial to prove their continued worth and any other daily misery that they may have to endure. For serfs who find themselves in that position, suddenly the life of an agricultural worker might seem quite appealing. Is a chapter serf a worse job? Possibly. But it's really the luck of the draw. For the lucky ones, it's a life of honoured service and a glowing pride deep inside that they held an opportunity to continue to serve the Emperor despite their own shortcomings. For other serfs, though, it's a lifetime of personal reminders that when it came to it, they fell short, and this is then permanently reinforced daily with physical punishments atop. In many ways, their brutal trial to become an Astartes never truly ended, nor will it ever until they succumb to the conditions of living on a freezing battle barge or an Astartes master who cast them aside without remembering to control their strength on one particular day. For all who serve the Emperor, only in death does duty end.
So for the what are they called? Hold on. I already forgot. Serfs, there we go. For serfs. Yeah, it's like luck of the draw. Which the luck of the draw seems to be way higher for serfs than any other jobs we've seen so far, especially in part 1. There's a chance you get like a good chapter you're in, you can make some friends, living life. You just like you said, it depends on your perception of like a bad job. If I was in that, I was a failed Astartes, over here like, man, I could have been somebody. I could have been like them, the Space Marines out there fighting, making my parents proud. And I'm over here a failed serf, just mopping up the drains, just living my life a failure. But nah, if I were to rate this is probably way at the bottom of the list of like worst jobs. Again, some serfs do get mistreated if they like with a bad Astaris or a chapter. They do get mistreated, and like he said, it could be worse. It could be a really bad job. But I feel like the it's just, again, it's a toss. It's like a good chapter, bad chapter. It's like a 50-50, not 50-50. There is a good chance you might be in a good position compared to the other jobs. In those other jobs, you're screwed. There's nothing good you can come out those jobs. But for a serf, you can be like in a good position. Again, which is rare for the other jobs. All right, next up we got Imperial Mining. Oh, that sounds bad.
So next up, another straightforward.
Sounds like you might have to.
It's likely
mine while you're fighting
mining
too.
Throughout human history has been one of the most challenging and dangerous professions.
Yes.
And unsurprisingly,
yes.
in the 41st
Toxic fumes you got
millennium,
inhaled
for
too.
humankind, little has changed. Of course, for some planets in the Imperium, this means actual cities being built underground. Such are the scale of the operation.
That's not
this
safe.
means that for many, a lifetime will pass by without ever having seen the light of the surface again. The concept of day and night will no longer exist as they live in a permanent state of darkness.
I don't want to do that.
Safety measures will be variable at best, and again, like most things, it likely depends on the kind of overseeing governorship you're working under. For planets within realms like Ultramar, your chances of having basic equipment are going to be better than that of a backwater planet with a tyrannical governor who cares about quotas and coins. Imperial miners are condemned to a life underground, as any exposure to the outside world with the light will be detrimental to their vision. Their lives underground, even with respirators, will ensure they spend their earliest days breathing in air saturated with fine particles, leading to many respiratory illnesses and other complications in life, meaning high mortality rates in the populace. Of course, that's even before you come to the possible dangers of cave-ins, other collapses, machinery malfunctions, and other explosions of poorly stored materials. It's a very dangerous life, but like most human societies, the positives will be in the people. The sense of collective effort, worth, and community are what enable Imperial mining communities to function. Plus, of course, the ever-present overseers who exist at nearly all levels of industrial Imperial society. Slack in your work, negligent, you'll be facing punishment physically or prevented from working potentially permanently, which for many Imperials is effectively a death sentence by any other name. Plus, of course, there's always the enjoyable risk of tunneling into a cavern and disturbing a nest of ambuls. Ambuls, those heavily armoured insectoid creatures that have sharpened claws for digging through straight rock itself. Plus, of course, enabling them to effortlessly impale and bisect any prey they track and come across. Ambuls are powerful monstrosities who have reached the peak of evolution through survival in the harshest of environments. Plus, for the workers of mining planets, they also have a taste that can't be beat. Delicious ambul.
Ew. Oh, that was a quick one. Okay. Miners, yeah, I would probably put them low too on the list. It's basically like mining back in the day, you know. It's bad, but it's not that bad compared to the other jobs. Make some friends. Just gotta pray there's no cave-in or some mimos or whatever they were called just then. Yeah, I'll also rate that one low too. But next up we got is what is this?
The extremely rare class of Titan, known as Psi Titans, or a specialized and feared class of Titan used within the Imperium's Collegia Titanica, known as the Ordo Sinister. Their weapons are known as Sinistrum, a term given to designate weapons which will artificially amplify human psychic power, but potentially risk consuming the Psyker themselves in the process. The Emperor had used such things during the Unification Wars with enslaved Psyker covens, and of course now does so on a daily basis for himself. The key to a Psi Titan is its so-called Syracrux Anima, and this is the piece of technology that enables one of the worst jobs for a Psyker to be assigned to. Although it's not far off serving as a battery for the Emperor, but at least in doing that there is some spiritual glory to be held, or at least those who serve the Emperor console themselves by telling this half-truth. Unlike a standard Titan, Psi Titans contain Psykers surgically locked into the machine itself. These Psykers are believed to have been placed within these Titans either as punishment for crimes against the Imperium, or at their own behest to allow them to become part of something more and help alleviate their own personal torments. Either way, they exist as psychic slaves to the will of the commander, who will use their powers and spirit focused through the Syracrux Anima. The command princeps of a Psi Titan is known as the Preceptor Indendent. and they will sit within the anti-psi shielded headpiece of the Titan. It's unclear if this shielding was originally placed to protect ordinary princeps from piloting the Titan. If it were, it appears to have not been enough to withstand the psychic screaming of its implanted human batteries. And so, within a Psi Titan, its commander is also a null or blank. And this is another reason as to...
Oh, wait. I think those are people that like don't have psychic issues. I think that's what null blanks are called or referred to as. I think. So they're good with like mental stuff don't affect them, I think.
Why the Psi Titans are astonishingly rare. Their pilots are required to be both a blank and simultaneously capable of commanding a Titan. Across the entire galaxy of the Imperium, candidates that meet this criteria are going to likely only range in the numbers of double digits.
Dang.
Regardless,
that's really small.
The role for the damned psychers surgically bound to the machine will live out truly horrifying ends. And it's why Psi Titans are some of the most feared machines of war.
You better be feared all.
Are tearing the psycher's soul and spirit apart, then focusing
so much pain
into psychic beams to form its weaponry. A Psi Titan can project waves of abject fear, psychokinesis, biomantic leeching of life, and even temporal distortion. Going back to that time travel thing being confirmed in 40k. Then on top of this, it still has its so-called Sinistra Manus Tenebrae, its Psi Cannon.
Yeah, Tenebrae, yep, the Psi Cannon, yep, I know what that is.
The psychic antipathy of the psychers within to create a warp breach similar to a vortex weapon. Meanwhile, psychers are burned and consumed from the inside out, not entirely dissimilarly to how, as I said, they're consumed by the Emperor. The principle is seemingly very similar, and although the specifics of the technology are far beyond human comprehension, it seems logical that the apparatus of the Golden Throne Room and the focused distillation of psychic power from individual psychers into the form of a weapon must share some similarities.
Yeah, because you saw that in part 1.
Their weaponry can engage and fight for as long as those on board can power them. So unlike conventional weaponry, Psi cannons can be fired repeatedly on and on until those on board are consumed and turned to literal ash. The psychic strength of the bound psyker on board of the Psi Titan and the strength of their soul are its only limitations.
Okay, that's bad. We finally got an actual bad one. That's bad. That's the worst job right there. Because in part 1 we saw something similar, because it was like that too, but it was for the Emperor. But this one is for like these special Titans. At the cost of the psychers on board, going to do a lot of pain to use these powers. Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad. That's the first bad one we got in part 2. Let's keep it going. In my opinion.
Now the Militarum Tempestus are yet another example of a curious worst job. Is it so harrowing to join an elite force within the Imperium? The answer is obviously yes. But as with most things, it also depends on your perspective, not dissimilarly to the role of chapter serfs. Tempestus soldiers are high-tier Militarum warriors, and those who serve within this elite force are indoctrinated in the Imperial Creed from youth. Their only culture is that of loyalty to the Empire of the Imperium and the Emperor, and demonstrate this by their unblinking immediacy in the execution of their duties. Many of them go on to higher roles amid the echelons of the Imperial factional hierarchy. So where's the worst part?
It
sounds glorious and proud to serve the Emperor and the Imperium in one of the most well-equipped elite military human forces. Sure, from the inside of the Imperium, it certainly looks that way. But if we take the blinkers off and look, as we often do, at the cold reality of the Imperium as it stands in M41, the Tempestus are both harrowing and dystopian in their indoctrination of new recruits, certainly above that of the standard Militarum, which by comparison is a fairly standard military force. The Tempestus lean toward the extreme mindscaping of individuals, and it is not as much the Tempestus themselves, for they exist as something of a middle stage between early indoctrination and higher service. And it is this early process which shows us how the Imperium controls and breaks down its citizenry in service of the Emperor through rigid, brutal indoctrination from near birth, surrounded by a world and culture that refuses to accept any other view and actively destroys all others with extreme prejudice.
So now you only know.
Being involved in that process is a worst thing. Imperial officers, sororitas, ecclesiarchy, even the Inquisition and assassins originate from what is known as the Schola Progenium. These are specialist imperial schools that usually contain the children of imperial nobles or other high-ranking imperials that have died. These are nearly always then orphaned children. They're known
There's always
as
the orphan children in this
and
universe.
From their entry into the Schola until they are either rejected into lower service or passed for higher service, they will be mentally and physically conditioned to serve the Imperium from day one. It's less an education than it is an enforced role within the Imperium, and for most it will mean progression to Tempestus. So it is thus the job, if you will, of Tempestus that is the worst part. It is the inhuman degree of training in the Schola that is one part of why becoming a Tempestus is the worst position to serve in.
Those who pass their trials is the worst part
and make it to selection day may be assigned to other specialist factions straight away, but for the majority of the Schola cadets are then enrolled within the Tempestus Scions. As with nearly all Imperial service, the training for high-tier military service is brutal, and as always the death rate among recruits is high. This training will last for 3 standard years of whichever system timescale the recruits are operating within, and the positive for recruits is that if they're successful they will be issued with some of the very best weaponry, equipment and resources available to standard humans in the Imperial Militarum. Some may progress to officer ranks and others then into the service of, say, the sororitas if they had not done so early directly from the Schola. There are in fact a multitude of ways a Tempestus may proceed to further service, so again, this is all sounding pretty positive. But as I noted, the Schola Progenium is perhaps one of the most, if not the most, bleak and disturbing aspects of the Imperium. Its entire purpose is to strip away identity, to homogenize, break down and rebuild the orphan sons and daughters of the Imperial elite, to erase their culture, their family ties, their believed loyalties. Sometimes this is done quite literally, with forcible mind-wiping. It has even been speculated that a child which demonstrates suitable qualities for enrollment may be taken while its parents are still alive. This is, of course,
what did you just say?
Enrollment may be taken while its parents are which demonstrates suitable qualities for enrollment may be taken while its parents are still alive. This is, of course, entirely standard and general Imperial behaviour.
That's crazy. I thought it was only for orphans.
Subtlety. Parental protest would only be dealt with efficiently by Imperial arbites or other ecclesiarchy enforcers. Age is also not a determining factor for children who arrive at the Schola Progenium. The only requirement is their ability to pass early physical mental assessments, because once again, whereas other areas of the Imperium draw humans from a wide spectrum of planets and systems with their own cultural backgrounds, sometimes language and other traits, the Schola seek the entirely opposite approach. They want to erase personal identity. It seeks pure conformity and reliability. It wants to only create single-minded who will never blink and miss.
Only for the Emperor.
Always know instantly.
Nothing else. Don't care about anything else.
Necessary to be taken and take that action almost instinctively. For the children arriving new to the Schola, all signs of their former lives will subsequently be erased. Belongings discarded and destroyed, individual clothing replaced with plain, identical uniforms, even their given birth names will be replaced with a selection from a long list of legendary Imperial heroes.
You taking my birth name away too?
Of the highest ideals of excellence that they must aspire to. Of course, it's also undoubtedly to continue this reinforcement of identity erasure. New orphans at any Schola will be cast in the Imperial mould, and only the strongest will emerge without damage and remain intact once the fires have cooled. For now, the Schola is their reality. It is all they will know, all they need to know. Any unwarranted questioning or disobedience
it sucks being a kid in the universe.
Dealt with severely. Of course, for the younger recruits, usually under the age of 6, this change is easier and more permanent. The conditions they're placed under more readily adopted. It's easier for them. Early memories become hard to remember with clarity when their days are spent, even at such a young age, doing intense mental conditioning and repetitive learning. One reason as to why this entire training process is one of the worst is for that of the older recruits. For those who have spent longer in their home culture, who have known their parents and formed close familial bonds, these things are harder to break down with mere repetition of studies and physical discipline. Humans are very capable of burying emotions and memory deep inside, and so for most older recruits, they require additional mindscaping to ensure absolute and undeniable commitment.
They're like, he still remembers all this? He still knows about his family after all this hard work we've been trying to instill into this boy? We gotta get deeper. Erase his memory. What? Mind wipe him. Mind scrape him. Do it. Do it now. He still remembers stuff? Do it again. Scrape his memory again. Jeez, it sucks being a kid. It sucks being a kid in Warhammer universe. I don't want to be a kid.
The Skoda, Tempestus, and any higher service. Even as the recruits sleep, servo skulls will continually pass over them, scanning and assessing their eyes.
I can't even sleep in peace. Jeez.
Dream behavior.
I can't even dream.
Will result in them being dragged into chambers for punishment vigils, both men.
I can't even dream. Wait a minute. I can't even dream. If I dream wrong, is it? I get hauled up for punishment. I misheard that. There's no way.
And assessing their eyes for any signs of suspicious dream behavior, which, if detected, will result in them being dragged into chambers.
That's insane.
For vigils, both mental and physical.
That's insane.
Then even for those who do sleep, they'll be subjected to continual subliminal reconditioning. And this is where one of the most harrowing practices will be enforced upon recruits. For those troublemakers, those who never really find their groove, their rhythm to get into life,
I'm still stuck on that dream part.
They'll be strapped into a chair known as the correction throne.
Oh, not
Heads,
the correction
arms,
throne.
and
That
legs
sounds
all
bad.
strapped in place as tiny needles are inserted to the back of the skull.
Ooh.
Their mind is then
Ooh.
flooded with neurochemicals that
Ooh.
wash through their brains and erase long-term memory. All the while floating servo skulls recanting litanies, screeching war cries for the ecclesiarchy. Such processes are only semi-effective, at best though. In fact, many Skoda who progress to the Tempestus and beyond will still retain troubling dreams of their discovery amid blood-soaked marble floors during some planetary rebellion. For others far worse, they may have visions of being torn from living parents as Imperial forces permanently silence them. Yet all of this is still not the worst part of being trained
What the hell do you mean?
for the role of Tempestus.
What do you mean? That's not the worst part.
One of the ways in which the Imperium seeks to break down individuals to become unquestioning servants for the Emperor is in pitting them against one another.
Of course,
and
you gotta have
this often occurs during Astartes training and the likes of the Inquisition and the Assassinorum. It's the same within the Skoda. Often while still in their early teens, those who continue to demonstrate a failure of memory erasure, or for those who continue to rebel, fight against the erasure of their identity, will likely be allowed to attempt to escape the confines of the Schola. They'll be given an opportunity. Most of these cadets will not miss it, and thus attempt escape.
Yeah, I'll do the same
However,
thing too, yeah.
This is merely another test. A test for them to see if they would in fact flee, which they nearly always do, and then a test for their fellow recruits in the Schola who are turned out to hunt down and eliminate their rebelling over. If this were not the worst end, any of those who may not choose to run but merely continue to buck against authority, or who continue to show too much free thinking, spirit, attitude, and in general disrespect to their tutors and instructors, will suffer without warning the massive hammer of the drill abbot. These are members of the ecclesiarchy who are instructors within the Skoda, and will quite simply bludgeon the troublemaker to a quivering pile of flesh in front of their fellow students. Then subsequently whatever remains of their spinal column is extracted and placed on display within their dormitory to remind those of what awaits any who resist. Upon one world, due to an apparent faulty batch of mindscaping chemicals, a whole year group of recruits rebelled, and the enraged Abbot Prime ordered the Officio Prefectus to crush the rebellion. So, whilst still alive, the mutinous cadets were meshed with mortar and used to line the Skola's ferrocrete walls. To this day, their bones jut out of long corridors, grasping for freedom as a warning to all new recruits the consequences of insubordination. Testing of recruits will continue endlessly right through.
Maybe I won't rebel. Maybe I won't try to escape. Maybe I'll just sit there and take it. You know, maybe escaping is not, rebelling is not the best thing to do in that situation. You know, I take it back. Humans, everybody. Humans, humanity, Imperium, woo, let's go humans.
And then when finally they become a Tempestus, the training continues. Many of these become progressively more severe, up to a point at which a cadet may be in fact ordered to execute a friend who they have trained alongside for many years.
Why?
Anything other than immediate and emotionless obedience will likely result in their own death. But this is the horrifying example of what the Imperium does to its own citizens. Their rationalization for this is that soon these recruits will have to face the true horrors of the galaxy, and that such acts serve to both prove their obedience and discipline of cadets and the effectiveness of their training, while simultaneously demonstrating both an ability to make difficult, essential decisions in the heat of combat. For example, a commissar eliminating a troublesome soldier. More importantly, such tests are designed to ensure that recruits are beholden to the Imperium and do not harbour any other loyalties, as well as wheedling out those who could likely not follow such an order. These are considered dangerous individuals.
I mean, that makes sense when you're fighting against these crazy aliens and demons.
The Imperium. It's in its ability to turn an innocent human being into an organic robot devoid of emotion and choice, to forge through brutality, fear and indoctrination a person into becoming a being capable of being ordered to murder.
Yeah, they started from like early birth too, like
without even flinching.
Almost as soon as you're born, give me that kid.
Or any emotion. Being
trained this kid to be great.
Tempestus via the Scola Progenium is one of the worst positions to find yourself in within the Imperium, because they will brutally erase not only your identity but also your humanity. Is it indeed any wonder, then, that all who exit the other side are capable of acts like enacting exterminatus, the trials to become an Imperial assassin, or the completely religious radicals of the Sororitas?
So, sorry for pausing so much during that part. That might be the worst one. Like, out of all the jobs we have seen, this video and the last video, that might be the worst one. that might be the worst one. Just the fact that they just trying to erase your memory. They share all this extra stuff. Oh, you still remember? You still remember your past? This guy's crazy, Johnson. Put him in a correction facility. And then more stuff happens. You gotta train still. And then when you become a Tempest, you still gotta do some crazy. Yeah, that might be the worst job. Worse than the assassin one, where they like make you drugged out and like take out people. It's always the one where they be kidnapping kids. Be the worst one, I feel. That was a lot right there. That was a lot. That was a doozy right there. But next up, we got the Imperial. I'm blocking it. Navy indenture worker. What is this? It doesn't sound bad. It can't be worse than what we just heard. So this is probably about to be light work right here.
The role of naval bondsman came up as a suggestion many times, so I felt compelled to talk about it in this video. However, it is relatively simple in its explanation compared to so many others, for not every crappy endpoint of Imperial life requires vast exposition. Sometimes it's a shit job, and that's the bottom line.
Alright,
no explanation necessary.
Keep it simple, I understand. I like
For any, though, who are unaware, some aspects of the Imperial Navy in M41 are highly comparable to the naval forces of ancient Earth, because while there are some who choose to serve, there are many more who would wish to avoid service aboard, say, naval vessels for the Imperium. Yet the vast masses of workers aboard Imperial vessels are entirely necessary. And unsurprisingly, Imperial ships are not beautifully advanced starships with cozy quarters. They're claustrophobic, often cold, undesirable places, especially during warp travel. Life for these workers is, like so many of the worst roles, harsh, unforgiving, short-lived, and completely alien to so many ordinary humans. These are the so-called indentured workers, having been press-ganged from any number of Imperial worlds, feudal, hive, industrial, penal, and so forth. If serving the Imperial Guard meant never seeing your family or home again, it at least meant you'd be getting something of a positive send-off. Serving in the Imperial Navy for many means being dragged off in darkness to no sound other than yourself being bludgeoned unconscious.
Why?
Of course, the Imperial Navy does not rely singularly on such activities for its crew. It also has plenty of regular signed-up voidsmen. But because the indentured crew who live down below and primarily are occupied with heavy, dirty, dangerous occupations and fed meagre rations, often death can be a steady force of attrition. And so ships will steadily also need to bolster their numbers of bondsmen. Perhaps as a result of active conflicts, or equally just natural wastage. Commonly, this will mean a few days spent gathering maybe 1,000 citizens from hive worlds that it's fair to say no one will likely miss, or depending on the fleet in the world, it could be tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands on this ship?
On the hive world, again, you might not actually miss those people. I would speculate myself that it seems reasonable ships may even communicate ahead to hive worlds to enable law enforcement to round up undesirables and prepare them for transport to the ships. Many of those who were dragged off in the night or arrested for their crimes will be placed into some kind of mass stasis, and by the time they awaken they will be already in the dark void of space. Their only alternative option at this point is death at the hands of armsmen. These are essentially the enforcers you can't go back now. Ships. Like a significant degree of Imperial production, the Imperial Navy uses a surprising quantity of quite literal manpower to operate its machinery, and Imperial ships are bizarrely no exception. This is of course another one of those situations where 40k drifts into the realm of the truly bonkers, but you all wanted to know this stuff. So aboard ships of the Imperium, macro cannons, which you see as those gigantic main cannon of the starships located all along the sides of the ship, are loaded and fired through nearly entirely manual labour, which is mad.
Yeah,
first,
that looks
the
huge.
breach must be opened by the crew pulling on massive pinions or chains, while a second crew readies a massive shell to be loaded. Once the breach is open, any spent casings are extracted and the interior of the breach cleaned by the third crew. Engineers additionally inspect for damage or impurity. Now a second crew then loads the truly gargantuan shell into the breach and immediately clear the way as the first crew come back in with a colossal manual effort in closing the breach. Once the breach is closed and secured, the crews are ordered to assume their set stand down positions as the gun is ready to fire and the loading cycle starts over. Life expectancy, unsurprisingly for macro cannon gun crew.
Yeah, I didn't think that would be a manual thing right there when I be seeing pictures of it in these videos. That's crazy. They got a load of this huge cannon thing, whatever it was. They got to do all this extra stuff. That's insane. That must take like a lot of manpower. Well, I seen it. It took a lot of manpower, a lot of time to do.
Crews can be even as short as weeks because the shit fire and the loading cycle.
I'm sorry. How long is the life expectancy?
Life expectancy, unsurprisingly for macro cannon gun crews, can be even as short as weeks because the sheer effort required, involved, and enforced, the conditions and rations are all so severe they're literally worked to death, not to mention those who are crushed or lose limbs through inevitable poor timings and judgments. Life within the ships is bad enough though that without such hazardous activities their days will be spent across a spectrum of endless back-breaking tasks regardless. Cleaning, transporting, loading of materials and resources, resupplying various components and machinery, crawling through ducts and ports in the belly of the ship to clean and ensure they remain operational, and likely along the way finding other dead indentured workers who perhaps weeks ago collapsed under the strain of the physical stress, temperature, or just otherwise exhaustion.
That's
often
horrible to deal with.
Also throughout the ship feature no safety measures of any kind. It's all too easy to slip on a patch of oil and grease and fall hundreds of meters to your spine-breaking death below as you land on some metal acute surface. The near continual wastage of the lowest crew members aboard the ship will likely not even register for the captain and senior officers.
He wouldn't even someone died.
These matters are taken care of below decks. They were never even considered to concern themselves with those individuals, if you could call them such, because similarly to tech thralls, they barely rank above servitors and therefore barely are any kind of consideration for senior ranking officers in the Imperium. If anything, the indentured workers aboard starships should count themselves lucky they have an opportunity to serve the Imperium, and perhaps in death they'll be forgiven for past sins, whereas if they were not doing so, then likely right now they would in fact be being processed into cubes of corpse starch. And for those who continue to cause trouble or step out of line, they can always be found a place in the refueling section of starships, and we all know what fate awaits those damned souls.
We do. I don't want that either.
I think last time some people missed the point about the starship refuelers and the fact that they were forced into horrifying disintegration while hauling the extremely
I think someone mentioned in the comments too. That's really bad.
That this was inefficient, stupid. Why not use robots or some kind of other belt system to transport this in? Again, kind of missing the point. These were punishments they had likely been forced into, and were they not already tech thralls, they likely would have had some means to ensure the process took place. It's hardly inefficient if the individuals concerned were already condemned. There's plenty more where they came from after all, which should be near enough the motto of the Imperium, to be honest. Because while such an activity seems absurd on face value, it seems horrifying and an offence to the dignity of humanity, that all fits the Imperium like a glove. Work aboard Imperial starships is riddled with dangers, it's filthy, unrelenting, and will literally pull apart the bodies of workers under the strains they must exhibit. Many workers' arms have been quite literally dislocated or worse by the strain of positioning and reloading macrocannons. Many others will just simply lose their minds while travelling in the warp, despite the very necessary protection.
Oh yeah, they go through the warp.
Yeah,
that's
right.
There's
something entirely troublesome about space travel. All feel it, even those who are resilient to such things, like those born in the darkness of space, because this darkness is always seeking somehow, somewhere, to creep into the human mind, and it finds this to always be easiest among the weak-willed, the disaffected, the resentful. So if you ever find yourself dragged off into darkness and awaken aboard an Imperial naval vessel, it's worth remembering that in the void of M41, no one cares if you scream.
Thank you for that positive message. Okay, so out of all like the workers, like the indentured servants things that we've seen, that might be the worst one. Manual labor, your life expectancy for like the macro cannons is like weeks. No one would really care if you passed away because they grab all the unimportant people and put them on this ship. They kidnap you. They basically kidnap you, put you on a ship. Warp travels, you might have to deal with like the mine stuff happening to you. You seeing bodies everywhere. No safety. Not safe. It's not safe conditions. No. Let's just keep it going. Industrial chem. Sewage workers. Okay.
Now, this was a job role which I think undoubtedly exists in 40k, but essentially for obvious reasons there is little if any actual description of it. So I want to note that this is a job role that we should regard as being speculative in the Imperium. I think given the nature that we know of the Imperium, they do not in any way shy away from using humans in place of machinery for basic tasks, and for whatever reason, so many people wanted to see this as a listed worst job. So it felt
the
fine
comments
to
wanted this
include
one.
it here. But in terms of industrial, chemical, toxic waste, sewage worker, what can you really say? What can we ourselves speculatively imagine about such a role? Well, like I said, it does stand to reason that on some hive worlds, if not many hive worlds, many industrial worlds, or even industrial sectors of hive worlds and so on, there will be those poor souls left to a life of breathing extremely toxic materials, burning their hands in chemical processes on a daily basis, and generally unpleasant tasks, having vastly shortened, painful lives as a result. This is pretty much the matter of course for life in the Imperium. And certainly, of course, being
that's a standard life in the Imperium.
Imperial overseers who will barely notice such matters. Similarly, for those tasked with crawling down into the depths of hive cities, crawling through tiny vented sections, perhaps slipping to be then chewed up through some gigantic cog machinery, or the inevitable loss of peripheral limbs, fingers, and so forth. But for many people who wanted to see this listed as a worst job, it seems that the simple thought of having to process sewage, waste material from hive cities, which is obviously vast in quantity, is the most unpleasant thing. And I think for obvious natural reasons. Now, while there will be a need for maintenance workers in hive cities to carry out such tasks, it's well noted that many hive cities exist on worlds which suffered total ecological collapse long ago, and so they no longer pay any note to environmental effects of waste. Commonly, hive worlds see the vast majority of the surface of a planet being completely uninhabitable, and instead they are these bizarre, toxic wasteland worlds with no flora or fauna to speak of. So any waste materials from hive cities are simply pumped out, leading to some having oceans of toxic materials.
That looks disgusting.
As I have noted previously, hive cities are sometimes wrongly referred to as arcologies, because they are not. An arcology is literally a marriage of the words architecture and ecology. It means a designed space for high density habitation with a low impact on the environment and world around it. Hive cities are near the opposite of this. They have massive impact on planetary environments.
All we know is impact on the environment.
The environment which does exist has been punished for so long that hive cities' impact is now effectively irrelevant, and their design is usually at least partially organic in nature, only in the sense that it evolved as needs demanded, not literally organic. Essentially saying it wasn't built by a careful, planned, entire design vision. So the point being, while people may gravitate to imagining how awful it would be to work in the quite literal bowels of a hive city, wading neck deep through waste to shut off valves that risk flooding entire sectors with toxic pollutants, or cleaning venting ports and sewage valves to ensure the hazardous waste of a hive are efficiently pumped out into the waste and beyond, in actuality there are a significant amount of hive citizens who exist already in such surroundings, and below in the underhive, likely thousands if not millions of people in very contaminated situations. So their specific jobs may not tie them directly to a life of being surrounded by the waste of 1 billion humans, but many hive citizens still do so regardless. So the idea of an imperial sewage worker is pretty awful, of course. Unlike those working in waste management of our modern world, for the Imperium it's more akin to the early and even late 19th century, where many homes did not have water transported sewage systems, and so not only for workers that would begin eventually doing waste collection, but for citizens themselves at this time, risks of issues like typhoid, cholera, other gastric illnesses were near constant. So working in similar or worse conditions within a hive city is very obviously a task most people would want to avoid, and so it's pretty natural many people would say that would be terrible to do in the 40k verse, because it's like being a normal sewage worker, but like everything else in 40k, turned up to 11, due to it being this mad dystopian parody of just
evil,
how
just darkness
horrific things can get when the darkness of the human spirit is allowed to just run riot. Except if you are thinking of how bad that would be for just the person doing that job, you're still not thinking bleak enough for the 40k verse. As I just did and have often noted, imperial citizens experience a life that is something in between feudal peasantry and early 19th century industrialization in M41 generally. So quite honestly, as awful as the thought of toxic sewage is, you really want to be thinking more about the horror of those workers in the 41st millennium who are working in the equivalent of scaled up chemical processing of the 1800s. Early human industrial civilizations were producing products with little to any understanding of the effects on humans, or if they did, it was certainly not anything that they were going to be concerned about. Acids, alloys, asbestos, cement, caustic soda, chlorine, copper, leather processing, lime, organic chemicals, phosphate fertilizers, many more things. Even power, like gasworks of the 19th century, were commonly documented as having a devastating impact on local communities and their environments, directly dumping toxic waste materials as well as saturating the air around them. One such community in London was eventually titled the Devil's Acre, and had gone from being a previously affluent community to a slum district, so poisoned that plants no longer would grow in the houses surrounding it.
Oh, that's crazy.
The life is very similar for
hopefully they fix that.
Working in such conditions. A permanent metallic taste in the mouth from toxic substances saturating what qualifies as breathable air. Odours that cut to the back of the throat worse than any rotting putrid carcasses, and the worst potentially burning skin and soft tissues. Then there would be other ongoing health issues such as silicosis caused by inhaling large amounts of crystalline silica dust found in stone, rock, minerals, etc. like the miners. Over many years, this could lead to lung scarring and damage. Workers could face any number of other conditions, simple toxic poisoning, organ failure, and as I noted earlier, any other number of invasive diseases and chronic conditions that build up maybe over many years.
What do you do?
Acutely,
what do you do in this situation? You can't do nothing.
Wasted and unable to remain productive. However, contaminated or no, you would then become a prime candidate for recycling.
Oh, of course, the recycling, yay. That is, there's nothing you can do there. It's just sewage. Just deal with all that chemicals, trying to like fix the, sewage, make sure it doesn't get over or gets flooded. I don't know where I'll put that on the list. I have no idea where I'm gonna put that. But let's keep it going because, this video's already long enough. I don't want to pause too much now. Corpse stars production.
So lastly, we come to another unfavorable role, and that is the workers of hive cities, so-called corpse guilds, producing those questionably desired but strangely addictive starch cubes, which form a dietary supplement for...
No, it's the cubes. Hold on. I'll be right back. I didn't know we were going to the cube route. I thought we already mentioned the cubes. Alright, I'm back. Since we're talking about starch cubes, food, I decided to grab me some food of my own, which is a Pop-Tart. Actually, you can't really see it in detail, but I got me a Pop-Tart. If I can just flip it correctly. There we go. I'm dropping crumbs. Alright, now we got some food together, so let's watch this and eat this together, shall we?
Or strangely addictive starch cubes, which form a dietary supplement for billions of Hive citizens.
I heard a little about this in the first
This is very
video.
obviously one of those sideways joke references that exist everywhere in 40k, and it is no mystery that corpse starch for the Imperium is effectively Soylent Green. Now, sorry spoilers if you've waited until 2021 to watch a classic piece of early 70s science fiction, and I want to talk about that movie more in the Apocalypse series because despite it being regarded with comedic overtones, largely due I think to the ridiculous trailer which came with the movie, and the fact that Soylent Green appears throughout popular culture since, it is in actual fact a movie which deals with quite a bleak and dark dystopian future, which was very typical of early 70s science fiction, but sadly later was replaced by the likes of Star Wars, which ensured that the vast majority of the genre which followed would lean more in the direction of blasty lasers and less of that post-20th century dystopian social commentary.
Boo, blasty lasers,
it's very clear where corpse starch takes its cues from though, given that on Necromunda it's even known as Soylent Viridian, a subtle reference just keeping it nice and legal. The production of this falls on the Mercantile Palladus or Corpse Guild. While Hive cities across the Imperium may operate under any number of different systems, the common one is that of the guild structure, whereby each guild effectively controls a specific task, profession or infrastructure. Now, while it is a very undesirable task, something that is commonly forgotten when discussing the vast amounts of humans within any Hive city, remembering these commonly number in the billions, is the fact that many hundreds of thousands, if not even millions, of human citizens are born and die on a weekly basis, and there is a logistical problem of collecting and processing those who perish. It is quite obviously a task which is legion in scale. Also, considering as we just discussed the toxic environment of many lower sections of a Hive city, I always seem to come back to the 19th century and how it's comparable for Imperial citizens, and so it's reasonable for us to assume that child mortality could often be anything like 300 within 1,000 births within areas subjected to such heavy toxification and pollution. But without those citizens who operate in the Corpse Guild, things could be much worse. The nightmare of body disposal would merely be replaced by the nightmare of widespread disease and contamination, even more than usual. So life for a member of the Corpse Guild is far from a desirable role, no matter though its importance. They will collect daily thousands of corpses within their designated sectors and transport them to be piled high within mortuary caverns, which are then steadily rendered down into the grinding machines aptly named as corpse grinders. The superstitious and naturally short lives of Imperial citizens mean that those within the Corpse Guild are regarded by many who will lock up their meagre dwellings, leaving the dead neatly stacked outside for collection. Forget of course the fact that without the Corpse Guild, large numbers of the citizenry would quickly starve without the rendered down nutrient blocks distributed to the populace. Perhaps most interestingly, underhive gangs may even ally with certain guilds in exchange of course for appropriate compensation. They will form so-called corpse harvesting parties, because while the dead are processed to ensure the survival of the living, recycled meat is
I zoned out for a little bit. Let me run it back.
Large numbers of the citizenry would quickly starve without the rendered down
they're important. They need food
to the populace. Perhaps most interestingly, underhive gangs may even ally with certain guilds in exchange of course for appropriate compensation. They will form so-called corpse harvesting parties, because while the dead are processed to ensure the survival of the living, recycled meat is also noted as being vital to the survival of many hive worlds. So-called corpse prospectors will source materials for the corpse grinders, seeking out veins of meat, and like so many of the undesirable denizens down below, they adorn themselves with decoration of individuals who live lives which wallow in the slaughter of others. Horrifying masks, inscribed rebreathers, and a whole tool belt of ancient surgical tools to quickly check on the value of their secured meat material and if it's worth disposing of or hauling back for processing. Now, while this might sound as if they're out for the daily human hunt, it's not quite that brutal, although I think it would be fair to speculate that this also happens. Instead, these bone scriveners may be seen scouring through the aftermath of battles, raking over the dead for their raw material worth. And
Okay,
again, this
good
of
for them, I
course,
guess.
is where the corpse grinder cults come in. While primarily identified as operating within the hive city of Necromunda, it's more than likely that cults of similar identification exist throughout the Imperium. The corpse grinders exist out of necessity more than desire for their horrific activities, or at least at first. Their very existence now likely attracts those who desire the sanctioned activity of such horrors, and the nobility might prefer to refer to them as recyclers. The very role of working within a corpse guild sometimes leads to the expansion of so-called corpse grinders, because corpse guilds must always maintain their quotas. So for those existing within the
always
darkness
maintain
of
their
such
quotas?
activities, those mandated to carry out corpse collection and acquisition of the raw materials for corpse starch, there are those who steadily will lose their grip on reality, perhaps to no surprise, into the waiting arms of the dark gods who thirst for blood and suffering. It wouldn't be fair to say that the officially sanctioned corpse guilds are anything comparable to these corpse grinder cults, where one acts out of necessity to efficiently process the dead. The cults seek fresh meat to redistribute among its followers, or use it as a means of a specialty mystery meat to tempt others who they might bring into following them. What does seem apparent is that the line between officially sanctioned necessary disposal to ensure survival of the hive and wildly heretical human hunts seems to be a very uncomfortably thin line. When
Why is it so thin?
Guilds push the boundaries of what is acceptable in fulfilling quotas for the guild, it's a slippery slope to butchery and worship of bloodthirsty warp gods. And so I surely feel obliged to say, is this starting to feel like sanctioned heresy enough yet?
Outro, the Imperial Heart of... Okay, yeah, okay, corpse, was it the corpse guild or the corpse collector? Which one was it? Let me make sure. Corpse guild. It's just the corpse guild in general. Doesn't seem like it's that bad for them, because they get to, you know, either murder people or just collect the bodies. Are they inspected? I mean, these are all bad jobs, but compared to the one we heard before, I don't think it's that bad, unless I misheard some things. Yeah, no, but the meat grinder part, disgusting. I didn't. It's disgusting. That's a disgusting thing. Let's just keep going. Outro time. The Imperial Heart of Darkness.
Through the roles of civilian life of the Imperium remains one of the most interesting aspects that exists in the 40k verse. Last time I talked about worse jobs was quite some time ago, and I said that we needed to see many more slices of civilian life back then. And this has started to occur a little. Black Library has been turning out many of its new 40k crime novels of late, and most of these focus more on the civilian side of things and less on the massive space battles against Xenos. So it is worth checking these out if you are unaware, because I personally have enjoyed all. When it comes to the Imperium, it's a strange place to even define what would be classed as a job, because many roles are far from what we would consider this to be. They're more assigned positions in society based largely on your status and background, not entirely unlike feudal societies of the past. As a citizen, you learn the trade your family knows, because the idea of rising above that is so minimal as to be barely even worth considering.
Yeah, don't even think about that. Stay
in
your lane, buddy.
Return to this topic, as it's always mad to really delve into the bleakness of the Imperium, and the inclusion of the Schola and Tempestus I think is especially important, because often I see people saying how workers wouldn't stand for that, they wouldn't stand for the conditions in the Imperium, blah blah blah. Yes, we've often seen as well rebellions in the Imperium, and we see how that goes.
I'm gonna say, like, you think they want to do this? Think they have a choice? Nah. If they try to rebel, they getting shot, put down, mind scraped. Nah, they have no chance. I can't go against a space marine. I can't fight against people with weapons.
They occur all the time. Yet 99% of the time, they are crushed and horribly unsuccessful.
Exactly.
As I have noted all too often, the problem with rebellions in the Imperium is that they are as quickly crushed as they rise, and often so brutally that it in fact stabilizes a system for at least generations. This is precisely why the Imperium continues to turn out these brainwashed, mind-wiped, zealous followers of the Imperial cult. Those serving the Imperium are not merely individuals who thought, you know what, this is the best way forward, although there are plenty of those to be sure. Any, though, existing at these higher positions other than drone plebs will be completely indoctrinated into the Imperial way. They are not merely people who just follow orders because it seems to be the right thing to do. No, it goes way beyond that. They are more akin to something like Kaiser Soze. He kills his own family in front of their captors just to prove his willpower. That's the kind of people you're talking about.
I don't know who Kaiser. I don't know who that is.
Imperium
I'm not cultured.
Of power. And so in realizing that, it will help you then to understand that even when rebellions or pushback happen toward the Imperium of Man, it can only go so far before they come up against this impenetrable wall of indoctrination, and at that point it goes no further. And it's this that is the nightmare of the Imperium. It's not what they are facing out in the galaxy, it's what they are facing within themselves. It's what makes 40K
Humanity
so
is scary.
Only in as much as you marvel at the dystopian horror, the dark comedy of it being so truly insane. It's what sets the world apart from nearly all other verses as well. For the Imperium, there's no forward progress, no constructive thinking, no tolerance of any kind. It's a miserable,
it's all for the Imperium, that's it.
Horrifying, rotting empire that has largely created many of its own problems and exacerbated many more, and in trying to solve them, continues to make things worse and worse and worse. The Imperium of humanity
from what I've seen so far,
millennium is truly akin to the Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now, but on a galactic scale. The undeniable horror of the human condition, the darkness in the human heart, fully unleashed. So until next time, if you have further next jobs or want to tell me which worst or best thing I should do next, please tell me below. We're only part way through so many different topics at this point, so I have a lot of options where we go from here. But as always, I finish saying thanks for watching, thanks for your support.
Thank you for a great video.
In the next one.
Thank you for a great, informative, okay, I didn't need a close-up of this. Thank you for a great and informative video. Yeah, I learned a lot more about this part right here. I learned a lot about this part right here. I always thought it was like automated, or maybe like machines were using this, which makes sense. It wouldn't be machines because they're scared of the whole AI incident. They don't want that to happen again when the AI started to take over. So they're using more like manual labor. But nah, did not know a lot of people who are doing like using manual labor to load up these cannons. We heard some really truly bad jobs, some not so bad jobs. Like some jobs viewed as maybe okay. Death is not failure, for even death can bring glory. I'm just gonna pause it. Can bring glory. Fear is not failure, for fear can be conquered. The only known failure is to ignore orders, even a slight hesitation in following them. Brings an ignoble end. Liber Partium Volume 1. Unless you're just like bottom of the food chain and who cares about you if you die. Look at all these series. The most horrific and unusual assassins. The Great Devourer. Oh gosh. Oh goodness. What's happening here? What a bleak and dark world that you guys love. What a bleak and dark world of the 40K universe. It's funny, I always thought that no, they're still the worst. The Dark Eldars, they're still the worst. From that one video I watched on like the factions, they're still the worst to me. But humanity is definitely a close second right now from what I've been hearing, just from the worst jobs. And I know he has a part 3 that we're gonna be watching too. But yeah, this was fun. This was fun to watch in a dark kind of way. Give that a big old like right there. Give that a big old like. Man, a lot of research went into this. A lot of research and thought and planning and writing. This is fun. This is really fun. Now I'm trying to see. Do I want to do like a top 10 thing I did last time at the end? You know what? Let's do it. Let's do it. Why not? Why not? I did it with the first video. Let's do it for this one. So I'll be right back. Alright guys, I'm back. Let's rank these jobs. Now I updated to the 18 worst jobs because there's 18 jobs now. So let's start with the job I know is like the least worst out of the worst jobs. Basically, it's a good job. Let's put the chapter serfs at the bottom. Blocking it, but you see right there, chapter serfs. As we know, there's a chance you'll be in a good chapter and you won't have to like work as hard as other people on this list. Like you have it way easier than other people on this list. The only downside is that, if I was in the 40K universe, I might be like, dang it, I'm a failure. I could have been a Marine, but I'm not, because I didn't pass all the tests. On the other side, you can also be in the bad chapters where you just get mistreated like the entire day, like your entire life just gets mistreated because you didn't become a Space Marine in the Starries. But I still think this is probably the best job to have out of this worst job list. Also, I might need to re-rank some of these worst job lists after like watching the after reading the comments that you guys put in the last video. I might have to re-rank these, but I'll wait to do that. But next up, I'm gonna rank the Imperial Miners. I think that should be below the Starship Refueler, which might need to be raised up in a later video. Actually, No, scratch that. No, I'm gonna put it below. No, then I'm gonna put it above the chapter serfs. Yeah. When I heard the YouTuber talk about this job, I'm like, doesn't really sound that bad. I mean, you do have to worry about like collapse, cave-ins, I forgot those bugs are called that can just basically tear through rocks. But you have a good community. You don't get to see the sun at all. But I feel like because there's so many, there's like a lot of worse jobs on this list. That's okay. I'm fine with not seeing the sun if it means I don't have to, suffer all these other horrible acts happening to me at the moment. Like the psychers, they have it rough, and some of these other jobs are about to rank. So yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's fine to put it here at the 11th spot. Next up, I think we're gonna rank the corpse skill, and I think it should be. This is where it starts to get a little bit difficult. It's always like the middle range. I think it starts to get difficult where to rank these things, because I know what should be at the top, like. The one should be at the top right now. I'm thinking I put this above the feudal peasant. That might be a wrong pick right at the moment. I think that's might be where I put it at. Because the corpse skill, they have to like deal with like a lot of bodies that happen, like they pass away or die in the Warhammer universe. Which would be like in the thousands, 100,000s of bodies that die. They gotta ship the body to this facility and like grind it. Probably got some all that toxic fumes. And then you got the people that needs to make sure they fill the quota, so they need to like, kill people in order to fill this quota so they can feed the population of over a billion, trillions of people. And probably gotta deal with all that smell and too many bodies, and it's just probably a nasty thing. And I feel like it should be above the feudal peasant, but not the guardsman, because guardsman, you're actually out there fighting people, like other aliens, and then you have like this pea shooter of a gun. You can't even like fight back against your superior. They give you like some crazy commands. So I feel like this is a good spot. Again, I might need to rank the Starship Refueler up a little bit higher when I do like maybe another video on this. But yeah, I feel good with the corpse skill spot. Next up, we're gonna be ranking. I feel like we should rank the sewer cleanup crew next, and I honestly think it should be above the corpse skill, but below guardsman. Yeah, from the videos, this is basically a sewer cleanup crew, as it mentions the title, it says it right there. Yeah, it's just them dealing with all the toxic and chemical fumes from all the different hive cities out there, or planets, that's just being built up and backed up. Nobody wants to do this job, but someone has to do this job. As I said, the fumes can be messing with your lungs. Basically what happened in like the 19th century, but like way worse, cranked up way higher. And I feel like it's still not, worse than being a guardsman and all these other jobs. But this is still a pretty bad job compared to the ones that's lower on this list. I feel like when you get past the guardsman, it's like, alright, this is where things get a little crazy over here. Alright, next up. I think we ranked the Navy indentured crew next. Yeah. Now, I wasn't exactly sure where I should put the crew on that. If I should put it above or below manufacturing. Because with that job, that's basically like you're a librarian, but you're like hooked to this system, doing manual tasks. Is that the one? No, that's not the one. No, I lied. I take it back. That's the administratium. Never mind. Okay, yeah. No, I'm fine with this pick. Because the manufacturing is just you over here, like you working in harsh conditions, but you like it's for the greater good of the empire, the Imperium. Like all these machineries and whatnot that people don't even know about. But with the Navy indentured crew, you're over here being kidnapped and put into space, working on these huge machines, like loading up this big macro cannon, which a lot of people die. Like they don't even last weeks working on this, like putting this macro cannon in. People losing limbs, people falling off. No one would care if you died. I mean, I think it's the same for the manufacturing, but I think it's way worse for Navy indentured crew because you don't have a choice. I think that's a good spot. I think that's a perfectly good spot to be at. Next up, we're gonna rank the Side Titan fuel, which I know where this was going at. I feel confident saying the Side Titan fuel is worse than being a psyker, because at least with a psyker, at least on one side, you're helping the Emperor. Like you like help him like get his body back. You're being used as fuel to help the Empire, or the Emperor, or mankind. Well, the Side Titan fuel you use just to power up these big Titans to fight against these waves of aliens over here, and you're experiencing excruciating pain, basically like a psyker, but it's for a Titan, which you might not even be remembered for. I mean, I guess you could say it's for the greater good, the mankind, like the Imperium, but yeah, I think the psyker is better. I mean, they're both horrible jobs, again, But I don't think it's above the administratia, because, again, that's you doing, like, menial tasks over and over again. It's like, am I even serving a purpose here? I don't know. I feel like this is a good spot for that. I feel it's a good spot. Now, next up, we got the tech thralls. Now, this is going to be pretty interesting. Where would I put these at? Is it worse than being a servitor, or is it below a servitor? I'm going to say okay, I got it. I have a reason for this now. I have a reason for this pick. I say the tech thralls is below the servitors, because at least with the tech thralls, you're serving the mechanicus, which means you might be serving the homicide. I almost messed it up. Oh. They had to replace your limbs with like machine parts, but you like living a little bit better. I think. I forgot like the main points in the tech thralls. I forgot. Oh no, you still have like your memories. Oh, shoot. Because with servitors, most of them don't have like the memories of what they were. You're just like mindless drones. But a tech thrall, you're kind of like a servitor, but you still have like that hope, that memory inside of you, which could be good and bad. Like you could be like stuck in this like endless cycle. Like, man, I stuck. I can't escape this. But at least you remember who you are. I don't know. It's hard to rank these. I'm just gonna put it here because at least you're serving the Mechanicus. But I forgot if you are a tech thrall, you're stuck in that position. I don't think you can ever escape being a tech thrall. Like, even when you die, like you're gonna be recycled. I don't know. We'll come back to that later one day. But last up, we got the Schoola Tempestus. Tempest. I'm calling it Tempest. Nah. I know where this is going instantly. I think you guys know where I'm going with this one, so let's not even delay this any longer. I put it at the #1 spot, even have it like a green color, kind of color, bolded it, text to make sure you know like, hey, this is the #1 spot right here. Yeah, it's kind of like being an Eversort assassin when they take the youth, the orphans, and like made them train to be assassins with all these trials. But it's way worse. But like he said, being a Tempest isn't that bad. It's the work leading up to being a Tempest that's the bad part. That's the horrible part. Over here, taking away all your personality, your memories, taking away your family, taking away everything, and only injecting you with like stuff for like bettering the Empire. Only thinking about the Empire and its best interest. I don't want any other thought besides being an Empire lover, supporter, Imperium supporter. My fault. Anything else? Cut that out. None of that. None of that. If you even dream about something suspicious, we taking your ass to the gallows. We're gonna inject you with needles in the back of your skull, infect you with the Imperium. I guess you could say propaganda. I guess you can say. I don't know. It's just bad. Again, these are kids who they're taking these young kids, orphans. Sometimes not even orphans. It's like, hey, that kid got promised. Hey, yoink, give me that kid. It's just crazy, and you gotta like. Become a Tempest, which is after you become a Tempest, you still gotta face harsh treatment too. It's never getting easier. It never gets easier. I feel like that's a perfect #1 spot for now. I'm kind of blocking it, so let me see if I can move myself. I'll move myself over here real quick. This is the full list so far, the top 18 worst jobs for the Imperium, at least in the Warhammer 40k universe. The bottom is Chapter Serfs, and at the top we got the Schoola Tempest. The Tempest one. I feel okay with this list. I will have to probably re-rank some of these things later on when we watch Worst Jobs 3. This is good. This is fun. This was interesting. This was an interesting video. I can't really say fun. Some stuff happened. That Tempest one messed me up. I'm like, ooh, whoa, they get crazy over there. They do what now? I just can't believe that. Imagine trying to dream like, peaceful thoughts, and all of a sudden you just get kidding like, hey, what were you dreaming about? What were you dreaming about? Nah, we can't have that. Come over here. My gosh. But yeah, that was the worst jobs part 2 of the Imperium. And I do love that he went into more detail in some of these jobs. Like again, the Tempest, he gave like the whole backstory, and the what was the other jobs? The serfs. He gave some more like information, like, okay, this is why I think it should be in this list, which I agree with. I'm all for longer videos. So this is very enjoyable to me. I'm fine with sitting through hours of content if it's good content. It keeps me engaged. I love that, and I learned a lot. Every time Warhammer, man, I'm like, all right, what they got cooking? And why did I ask that question? Of course they got something dark cooking. It's always the kids. How can we protect these kids? You don't protect these kids in Warhammer. They just take your kids. They take these kids because humans are the worst enemy to themselves. I haven't even seen them fighting other aliens yet, like the orcs, the Eldars. I haven't seen them fight the Tyranids. I haven't seen them fight anybody else yet. I just hearing about all this bad stuff happening inside the Imperium. And it needs to stop, but it can't stop. That's the only way they can combat against the forces of evil, which is also inside it's crazy. The Warhammer is crazy. But yeah, we're going to end this long video here. Hope you enjoyed my reaction. Hope you enjoyed the content. Hope you learned something together. Yeah, thank you for watching. My cup of tea is out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Man, they just ruthless out here. These people are ruthless out here. Just kidnapping kids is like. It's crazy. It's the kid part is crazy. Over here, like taking like random civilians. Like, hey, I don't think it'll be useful here. Let's put you inside this big old ship and man this big old macro cannon, which you might die in a couple of weeks. Who cares? It's for the greater good. You're fine. No one's gonna miss you. It's fine. Come on here. Come on aboard. I don't want to go if we don't have an option. Come on aboard.